and it was fun.
So do genes, I always looked at them as they turn on and off. And when I read your book, I love this idea of they're clean or they're dirty. So in that example, do genes, like, do we trigger them and they get expressed, or does that happen and then they get turned off? Are they dynamic like that?
Yes, 100%. Not all of them. I mean,
okay.
Yes.
Dr. Mindy in the house. All right.
I appreciate that.
The carnivore diet.
Because of what we eat.
Honestly, you've really touched my heart.
So Fast Like a Girl, it's ready for pre-order now. I hope this book changes your life the way the information has changed hundreds of thousands of women that have applied it. From the bottom of my heart, enjoy, and let's get healthy together.
What I find fascinating about your book is the Agouti mouse story, because that really caught my attention as well. Now, you took the Agouti mouse study and it transformed your career and what you looked at. So
Yep.
Can we let's start with why that study was so pivotal. Prior to that, the only person I'd ever heard talk about epigenetics was Bruce Lipton.
Exactly.
So let's bring our resetters up into what the heck the Agouti mouse study was and why did that change our opinion on genetics?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And so, we grew up with the belief that family history was a big, big deal. And it is. You're told that your grandpa was an alcoholic and, I'm an alcoholic and now you're going to be an alcoholic, and, so-and-so died of breast cancer and so did your aunt and so did your great grandma. And so you're thinking, okay, well, when am I next? And so all this mindset around genetics is what we all thought. And my first year in med school, I was introduced to Dr. Bruce Lipton's work, and I never sit in the front row in class, but that was the day where I just sat glued to that TV. And it was a primer for me about how our perception of the environment influences how our genes turn on and off. And that was just like, whoa, but it was whoa. And it made sense, but it didn't really strike home because he just talked about it generally.
Mm-hmm.
When Dana talked about it in her NOVA, in her research that was presented on NOVA, she said she basically took, Agouti mice which were genetically susceptible and programmed for cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and cancer. I mean, they are genetically built to get these things. So researchers could then, do treatments to see which drugs support diabetes, which drug supports cancer, and so on. So they're built for big pharma to do their research on, and which is great. And Dana had a thought. She goes, well, all right, they're genetically primed for going into these things, these three major health problems the whole world struggles with. How about I just change their feed, their nutrient, and see if they go on through life and get those things. Once we presented it to the main researcher, the head of the researcher, he was like, yeah, well, sure, whatever. And so she added some folate, some B12, and maybe some choline and some other things. And these mice went on to not get cardiovascular disease, diabetes, or cancer. And it was like, what? You're programmed to have these three things, or one of these three things at least, and they went on to get none of them. Mm-hmm. And at the end of that video that I saw from NOVA, you can Google it, Tale of Two Mice NOVA, and you'll still see it. It's still good. And she goes, well, it's too early to tell what to do with this information, and we don't have the drugs necessary yet to support this type of technology. But I was like, what are you talking about? All you did was introduce nutrients. That's right. It. You did the work already, Dana. So I've tried getting her on, interviewing her multiple times, and I can't.
She won't come on?
No.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. Maybe, I'm just guessing here. Maybe she's, even though she used nutrition, she can't believe that nutrition is that powerful. Maybe she doesn't understand the nutrition components behind it, but she does to some degree. I don't know. Maybe it's time. Maybe she's moved on from that study. Maybe there's conflict within the lab or the research. She can't talk about it. Who knows?
Yeah.
I can
Do you,
theorize.
do you think there is a big pharma piece to that? Because if we have a genetic predisposition
Yes.
for something and we get
Yes.
put on and we get scared and told that we're going to get this, we're more motivated to get on medication than to change our lifestyle.
And then who funds a lot of these studies?
Yeah.
Right. And so honestly, that was the first thought that came in my mind. I just didn't say it.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to put that out because it was a phenomenal study. And if she's shy, my guess is there's a financial reason there.
Yeah. And who knows, who knows, but big pharma is a player in everything that we're doing these days, unfortunately. And,
So, okay, so out of that study, so that at that point, that was like 2007, 2006. So we're talking like 13 years ago. So we had Bruce Lipton saying that our thoughts would change our genes. And then we had that study saying your nutrition can change our genes. So what have we learned since that time? Like how do we look at genetics? And when I say we, I probably should separate out the natural healing world and the pharmaceutical healing world are looking at this quite differently.
Yeah, I am very my work is extremely frowned upon by, I think it's called ACMG or something, the American College of Medical Geneticists or, genetic counselors or whatever they're called. And no disrespect to their work. I mean, you need to have genetic counselors for genes like, cystic fibrosis and Down syndrome and celiac disease and hemochromatosis and on and on. There's a lot of heavy things out there that you need to understand how the genes are working for disease causative genetic mutations, right? And Down syndrome is a touchy situation to talk about, because Down syndrome kids and adults can do very well in life. Almost all populations who are born with certain genetic serious conditions can actually do very well as long as the rest of their genes are clean and functioning. It's just, they're very, very susceptible. So genetic counselors have their job, but genetic counselors look at genetic variations or mutations that are disease causing, period. They look at MTHFR or NOS3 or COMT or DAO or any other gene that I look at as insignificant because they are not associated with specific diseases. They associate BRCA1 as a breast cancer gene. I don't look at BRCA1 like that. I look at BRCA1 as not being able to do its job as a sensor for damage and then triggering NRF2 and other glutathione genes to step up and protect against damage. They just look at it as breast cancer related. So this whole field of genetics is everywhere. It's drug pharmacokinetics. If someone is given warfarin in a hospital for an acute situation, their ability to metabolize warfarin might be very slow. And so if they give a standard amount of warfarin to someone's, warfarin metabolism being very slow, they can bleed out and die quickly. And that just happened to a friend of mine's grandmother. They didn't do genetic testing on warfarin, prescribed warfarin, she bled out.
Wow.
So that is something that should be done before warfarin is ever prescribed to any patient doing warfarin studies on pharmacokinetics. Then you have genetic counseling and family planning kind of screening for before you even get pregnant, for the, future mother and future father to look at the sperm and the egg and see which, or just their general genetics to see if they're going to, what are the odds of them passing on cystic fibrosis or hemochromatosis or whatever else. That to me is very defeating because if your odds are 1 in a million to get cystic fibrosis or 1 in 50,000, you still cannot do anything to prevent that. So now you're going to an pregnancy with fear instead of, love and empowerment and excitement and nurturing. Your entire pregnancy, you're scared. And that's not good for the womb.
Nope.
So then you have, folks like me who are looking at genetic variations that are extremely common in the population that have known functional consequence of adjusting how that gene functions, making it either function faster or function slower, but they're not known to cause disease, but they are known to affect the function of the gene, which can either increase or decrease susceptibility in various conditions. And if you do that, when you're really trying to optimize the health of someone, or someone is really struggling their whole life, or later on, when you know which genes you have, which are modified in their how they express due to various things, you can take targeted specific actions and make lifestyle changes, food changes, supplement changes, medication changes, knowingly, no guessing, knowingly, to improve the function of those particular genes. And it works, and it's phenomenal.
It sounds to me like the way we look at labs. If you walk into your medical doctor, you either are healthy or you have disease. There's no in between.
Correct. Or you're not sick enough.
Right. So what I'm hearing is that you've taken the understanding of genes, and you're in that, it's like functional genes. You're in in that area of how do we use it to change our lifestyle.
Exactly. It's empowering. The work that I do is empowering.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be scary. I mean, people are going to be scared when they run their genetics, because there's a lot of fear associated with that. And it's perpetuated because most genetic reports are perpetuating that, even though they maybe don't even mean to. I think most of them don't mean to.
Yeah.
But it's just when you see a lab, your genetics report come back with red and it's ++, so that means you have a genetic variation. It's red. You're like, scary.
Right.
So we've thrown that concept out the window. We don't color genetic variants red anymore. Right. We still have ++ that's present, because that's the scientific notation for a variant. But the color red means danger, fear, broken. And you immediately want to say, well, I want to fix that. Well, it might not even need fixing. What you need to know ultimately about a genetic variant, which is basically not commonly found in the population, as at least in terms of the amount of prevalence of not having that variation, meaning that if I have a genetic variation in my MTHFR gene, maybe only 20% of my ancestors have that, right? So it's not common, as common as not having that variant. So they're common variations which affect the function of the gene in terms of what it does, its job that it does, but it's not disease directly causing.
Yeah, that's mind-blowing.
Yeah. And
that's a paradigm shift.
It's a major paradigm shift, because what happens is the earlier you do it, the faster you can understand how you're wired. It's like, imagine if you were born into your car and you could never see the outside of your car, but you heard from other people. You could talk to other drivers of cars, how they're doing. And some people go in mountain roads and they cross streams and they can, go over big boulders and they never get stuck. And you're like, oh, that sounds fun. And you go try to do that. You get stuck instantly. You're like, what the hell? You're having so much fun. I'm stuck in the mud. Well, you drive an old Volkswagen Beetle, and they're driving this monster Hummer. But you have no idea what your genes are because no one showed them to you before. So are you a Hummer or are you a Volkswagen Beetle? Both are fine, but you just have to know what terrain you should be driving in and how you should be driving. So,
oh my gosh, I love that. And would you say, and we're going to dive into like some of the things that clean genes and make them dirty, but one of my big passions is teaching people how to find the right diet for them, or find the right fast, because we become zealots for, I'm a vegan, I'm a keto, I'm a this, and I don't believe the human body works like that. Right. I think we all have our perfect diet at different times. Is that because of genes? Is that because our genetics are different?
Yes, but it's also our environment is different. Our occupations are different. Our nutrient, densities are different. Our microbiomes are different. Our pregnancies, when we were in our mother's womb, that was a different experience. Yep. So it's all together. So most genetic testing looks at genetics, boom, done. And the problem with that is it's extremely reductionist. I mean, it's reductionist to the nth degree,
Yep.
especially since you're looking at genetics and then you're looking at each gene in singularity. That is as extreme as reductionism as you get. So why would I, as a naturopathic physician who believes in holistic, treat the individual or support the individual, not treat, support. Why would I look at genetics? Because I look at how genes work together, holistically together, how genes communicate with each other and a group, like in a group of 20 even genes. That's why StrateGene is so complicated for a lot of people, including me.
And me, when I got sent my report, I'm like, what? So I'm
Yeah.
excited to hear what you have to say about it.
Yeah, but it's right now it's getting cold outside. I eat differently. I act differently. And the sun is lower in the sky, and in the summer, I'm more active. I'm moving more. I'm burning more calories. It's hot. I'm sweating. Sun is higher in the sky. My activity level, my environment, the pollution level, everything. My heater is on in the home now where it wasn't before. So now I have forced air that's fueled by gas. Not ideal, but there you are. So gas furnace, and I'm more sedentary because it's dark outside and I'm not going to, anyway. So it changes.
So as your environment changes, your gene expression changes.
100%. And your demand for fuel changes.
Interesting.
So, if you think about how you drive your car, again, car examples are used all the time and they seem kind of stupid, but they're so easy because they're relatable. If you're driving in traffic and you're starting and stopping all the time, you're going to wear your brakes out quicker. And your fuel efficiency is going to go down because you're starting a car that has higher friction and higher mass to start moving. But if you're driving on a freeway from 100 miles and you're like, God, why did I get 40 miles a gallon when I'm in the city? I get 15. Well, you're way more efficient. You moved off that initial friction and motion. You're now carrying it as just easy. Now it's maintaining. If you are bumping your head against the wall mentally every day with your coworkers who drive you nuts, your boss is a punk, constantly micromanaging you. You come home to kids who you've enabled for 12 years to do everything for them. And now they're 18 and they still can't do anything. Parents, listen up. Don't enable your kids.
That's a gene problem.
Yes. And, and then you're stuck in traffic and you're sucking down carbon monoxide. People cut you off. And you get a ticket, for being on your cell phone because you're stuck in traffic. You want to be productive, and then you get in a car wreck to boot. That's a bad day. Your genes have been saturated. Now compare that to a day of sitting on the beach in Kauai or Maui, people bringing you fresh squeezed acai berry, guava, mangoes, whatever toots your horn. The ocean is warm. You're just laying in the sun, not burning, nice quiet breeze, nobody around, watching the birds. Your genes are at rest. They're not even working really. They're just keeping your heart pumping and your air moving. And, it's a different experience. So what do you eat then? And what do you have to do? I rarely take supplements when I go on vacation.
Interesting, because your stress levels are so significantly different.
Yeah. And I will share something also is all three of our children were conceived on vacation.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So
does that make them superior?
I think so. Yeah. But,
potential mothers out there or parents, listen up. Here's the secret.
Yeah. I mean, it was whoops 1 and whoops 2 and whoops 3, but, I'm a very happy, proud father. But it's, our genes were cleaner. It was a more calm environment. Her womb was not under duress or stress, and she wasn't dealing with work or travel or me in a negative way. It was, we're relaxing together. We're in a clean environment, and it was fun.
So do genes, I always looked at them as they turn on and off. And when I read your book, I love this idea of they're clean or they're dirty. So in that example, do genes, do we trigger them and they get expressed, or does that happen and then they get turned off?
Yeah.
Are they dynamic like that?
Yes, 100%. Not all of them. I mean,
okay.
our hair color is set, our skin color is set, so these things are programmed, done. So those genes did their job, and now they're, from my understanding, which is really rudimentary on skin color and hair color and eye color, but those happen very early. And then when it happens, that's it. That gene is not changing. It's not dynamic. It's just brown hair, hazel eyes, done. And you can't change that. So, but what you can change is your neurotransmitters, how they're produced, how they're eliminated, how they're transported. You can change your immune system. You can really support it and increase it. You can also really trash it and suppress it, just from your mood, just from your diet, just from your environment. And so when you're exposed to, initial formaldehyde or chemicals or alcohol, your glutathione, peroxidase and transferase genes might spike because there's a demand for it to initially increase. So you get a increase in liver enzymes, as you see in your patient. And these liver enzymes on labs are elevated because those liver enzymes have upregulated due to inflammation or trauma or some chemical environment or exposure. And you see that in alcoholics. You see that in people with fatty liver, and you see it in diabetics. Well, those liver enzymes are elevated because those genes are working triple time, and they have to produce more enzyme to deal with the total load. So you see it as a doctor all the time, but you just never tie elevated GGT to the GGT gene producing the GGT enzyme, because it was upregulated, it was turned on at a faster rate in order to deal with whatever it's dealing with.
Right. And you have no idea that you can control it. You're just told.
Right. You're just told, yeah. And you're told certain things, a holistic or functional doc or health professional will look at that and say, your GGT is elevated, and, we'll put you on some liver support, or cut down on your carbs, or exercise more, or jump in the sauna more. They'll give you some recommendations, but they'll give these generic recommendations, but they'll fail to understand that those recommendations are reducing the burden overall of chemical exposure and reducing the burden of your liver, which is reducing the workload on GGT, which is then reducing the genes necessary to go to work at overtime. And so the gene levels go down.
Interesting.
Right? So we need to start understanding at a genetic level the actions that we take and the lab values that we see, like elevated homocysteine. You see high homocysteine in your patient, comes back at 30. You're like, whoa, okay, well, let's put you on B6, B12, and some folate. Why? Those are the genes that help recycle homocysteine.
Nice.
Well, all right.
So somebody could take the CBC they get from their doctor, let's just say their traditional doctor, and they could take a StrateGene test, and they could figure out how to build a lifestyle that will make sure that they are changing those traditional markers on a CBC.
100%.
Yeah,
yes.
Amazing.
So
why aren't we doing that for everybody?
Yeah, it's happening, and that's what I've been doing and teaching for years. But it's flipping conventional models of medicine and even alternative models of medicine on its head.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you go to a doctor for high homocysteine in conventional medicine, they'll just monitor it, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And because they don't really understand it, maybe they'll tell you to reduce your protein intake. And that's kind of it. And stop drinking, and maybe that's it. They don't go to nutrition. They might look at anemias. They might look at, folate and B12, maybe the good ones. And if you go to a functional doc, they'll look at that, and they'll prescribe a lower protein diet, and possibly look at your kidney health and give you some nutrients and look at your anemias. But very few people are looking at the genes that you're born with to see which genes are really playing a role in homocysteine metabolism, and then which cofactors those particular enzymes need. So genes make enzymes, and enzymes need nutrients in order to function, a lot of them. And then once you understand which nutrients are needed and which genes are working slower or faster, and at the same time, if a certain gene is slowed down from heavy metals or inflammation, and other genes are increased from heavy metals, and increased from inflammation. And you have that data and you understand that your particular gene for this is slower or faster. And then you also know that your labs, you have high homocysteine and low vitamin B2 and you're anemic. Then you look at the whole picture and you're like, that makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to
Yeah.
reduce my inflammation. I'm going to increase my B12 and folate. And I've got the MTHFR genetic variant, which is slowed down by 70%. And I have this genetic variant in TCN1 reduces my ability to even move B12 out of my blood into my cell. So that explains why my B12 levels are so high in my blood, but yet I'm anemic. So
Fascinating.
yeah.
And when I read your book and I took the test, there was a part of me, we do a ton of heavy metal detoxing. And I thought, well, it might be of interest for me to do it was such an easy test to take. That StrateGene was just like, thank you for making it so easy.
Mhm.
And I'm like, could I do that before I detox somebody to find out if they need extra support or
Yes.
what they might, how bad their detox is going to be or how easy their detox is going to be. When I first learned about MTHFR, I felt like people were walking around carrying it like a badge of honor. Like,
Yes.
oh, I have MTHFR, and that goes against everything I know about epigenetics, is that it's not a label. We should be dynamically working with these. So explain to me a little bit of how this would tie into detox and a little bit of MTHFR and where that fits in.
Yeah, so I'll hit the heavy metal detox and chelation first. My passion is environmental medicine. So
I saw that.
yeah, I love environmental medicine. So the environmental medicine is basically looking at the environment and how it impacts you, and if it impacts you, it's impacting your genes. And if it's impacting your genes, your genes are not able to function very well. And if the genes don't function very well, they can't do their jobs. If they can't do their jobs, you get symptoms, and that impacts you.
Yes.
So if you remove these exposures that we have or minimize them, because we're all going to get them, if you minimize your exposures, then your genes are able to function and your symptomatology goes down. It's imagining a glass filling up with formaldehyde, and then once it starts filling over the edge, that's when you start getting symptoms. And you start adding formaldehyde and chlorine and arsenic and so on, you're going to fill it up quicker. So avoidance is number one. But glutathione genetics, it's really interesting. StrateGene DNA test has only been out for a couple months, if that.
Oh, wow.
And it's brand new and years in the making, years.
It was so easy. I got to tell you, that was so easy to do.
Yeah, the spitting part is easy. No, the interpretation is a little different.
On my end, it was really easy.
Yeah. So yeah, I came out with a tool. I was just talking on an interview today. I said, StrateGene is you go to Home Depot and you have a flat-headed shovel and you got some shears and you have a lawnmower. Those are all tools that everybody knows how to use, right? And you got this really funky looking thing. It looks like a lawnmower, blower, shovel. It's even got some fertilizer built in and some, 1-inch PVC and some sprinkler heads. And you're like, what in the hell is that? And you look at it, it looks cool. And you just keep walking. That's StrateGene.
I believe it. I believe it.
Yeah, it's a new tool on the market that needs a lot more training. But in the StrateGene tests that I've so far looked at, my wife's and about 5-6 other people's, their glutathione pathways are fascinating to look at. And they tie so much into the troubles that they've been having or the less troubles that they're having. Now, that does not mean that if you have a more sluggish, dirtier glutathione genes that you're destined for life to be struggling. Mm-hmm. It could be, unless you know and you do genetic tests and you find out where those problems are. And then you can really understand why and pinpoint. So for example, my wife has a really tough time producing glutathione. And then she has a difficult time utilizing glutathione. And then she has a tough time recycling it. And she also makes a plethora of reactive oxygen species and hydrogen peroxide. So here she is creating a bunch of reactive oxygen species in her body, which is good for fighting infections and stimulating the immune system. But then she has a really poor ability to produce glutathione, which helps modulate the immune system and calm it down and get rid of those reactive oxygen species. And she also has a reduced ability to get rid of arsenic and formaldehyde and chlorine, which dirties all her other genes. So it makes sense that she was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis at the young age of 17.
Interesting. Yep.
And it all started from a viral exposure that she had when she was a kid. She got sick, her immune system went nuts, and it never calmed down. So, and then she was an athlete. She was a really good sprinter in 400 meters hurdles in Estonia. She was very, very good. But exercise at high level is very pro-oxidative, and her ability to recover from exercise is slow. So if you're exercising hard and you have a slow recovery, you better start listening to that, and you better start adjusting. And if you do a genetic report in genetics and you start seeing, oh, this explains so much, you can start modifying and doing some things. So I did an interview with Ben Greenfield years ago, and I went over his genetic report. And he creates a lot of oxidative stress. I could share this because we did it publicly already. But, there's moments where he has difficulty recovering, and his ability to generate oxidative stress is pretty high. But I want to see his new StrateGene because there's a lot more genetic variance on the new one than there was on the old one. So, but yes, as a health professional working with detoxification and heavy metals with your patient, StrateGene is going to be a massive, massive tool.
Yeah, because we see people have all different kinds of detox reactions. Some just breeze through it and they're like, this is amazing. And other ones, we have to make a lot of modifications. And I'm an impatient person. I just like to, let's get the result as quickly as we can. And so when I read your book and then took the test, I was like, this is really fascinating. I'm curious if we could have a better understanding going into a detox, what the nutritional needs are of a person. And that's
and minimizing the side effects or the quote unquote detox reaction. Oftentimes we will, when we're working on heavy metal chelation or trying to cleanse someone, if they do poorly, we will quickly equate that to a detox reaction, and it could be. But we also need to understand that it may not be a detox reaction. It could be something else. And when you look at the pathways and StrateGenes, all these biochemical pathways and the genes and the genetic variants and the nutrients and how do they work together in the environment, you see all that, at a glance. It's quick. It's overwhelming initially, but once you understand how to use it, it's easy. Easier. But a lot of people do not do well with glutathione. They do not do well with DMSA or DMPS or sulfur-based compounds. Some people do horribly with them. Other people do fantastic. And then other people do fantastic initially, and then they do terribly. And so when you look at the genetics and the pathways of glutathione, you quickly understand why, and you can mitigate it, on the spot. And you're not guessing,
Right. Talk a little bit about methylation, because the other interesting thing that I see emerging in the world is that people that are engaging in information like yours and mine are starting to understand the power of the mitochondria. They're starting to understand the term methylation, but it's almost like a little bit of knowledge is sometimes dangerous. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on methylation as far as the body's ability to detox, where it comes into play with genetics, and where it comes into play with our health.
Yeah. So methylation. So any word that typically ends in the I suck at English stuff. At the suffix at the end?
Right.
Ends in ation. It defines an action, right? So you have methyl. And methyl is basically the simplest carbon compound in the body. It's a carbon and 3 hydrogen. Who cares? But it's the action, it's methylation is the action of taking that methyl group, and it'll come off of one compound and it will jump on to another one. And so one compound will donate the methyl group and it will give it to a different one. And once it does that, that other compound now has a carbon on there. Who cares? And 3 hydrogens. Well, it changes the function, it changes the shape. And so it's a lot different. And so, for example, serotonin, skipping a step, methylated becomes melatonin.
Right,
Okay, histamine, methylated becomes methylhistamine. Homocysteine, when it goes through the active methylation, becomes methionine. Meth, you hear that? Methionine. It should be actually called methylhomocysteine. If they did it, it would have made so much more sense The methylation cycle it starts with methionine up here, goes to the body's primary methyl donor. So the compound in the body which gives methyl groups away the most is called SAMe, and you've heard of that as a supplement probably, methionine. There it is. And that works in conjunction with ATP and magnesium. You hear S-adenosine triphosphate is ATP.
Right.
So there's basically an ATP bound to a methylated methionine with magnesium. That's like a superpower in the methylation world. And then after that SAMe gets used up, it becomes homocysteine. And then it grabs on that homocysteine, it receives a methyl group from methylcobalamin, vitamin B12, in conjunction with methylfolate, which comes from the folate pathway in MTHFR. And now that homocysteine is now methylated and becomes methylhomocysteine, i.e. methionine, and goes back around. And it just keeps spinning like that. It just keeps regenerating. And so the primary consumers of that pathway is to form creatine and phosphatidylcholine. Phosphatidylcholine is where all your cell membranes contain phosphatidylcholine in large numbers. You also have a lot of phosphatidylcholine in your bile for slipping through the sphincter of Oddi and through the bile duct and into your small intestine. So phosphatidylcholine is really, really big. And creatine is really, really important for neurodevelopment, brain, spinal cord, muscular movement, coordination, speech. So creatine is very, very key.
And are those only supplements that you can get, or is there ways to get those through diet?
Oh, you definitely through diet. Your body makes them. So 70% of that pathway called methylation is used up just to make creatine and phosphatidylcholine. And the primary sources for those are meat, eggs, fish eggs as well, especially fish eggs. So those are great. Liver is also good.
What if you're a vegetarian? You wouldn't
if
make
you're
those as much?
Yeah, if you're a vegetarian, see, this is where vegetarianism, like these movies and documentaries that you see streamed, I'd love to be interviewed for that, but I would destroy their whole theory.
Like Game Changers?
Oh yeah, I would just destroy it. And here's why. So if you are consuming the precursors for creatine and phosphatidylcholine, or even consuming them straight up and from the food that you eat, you don't have to make them, right?
Right.
It's not even made.
Right.
So it's like, if I come over to your house and we want to make a salad, and you've got in your backyard romaine and tomatoes and all that cool stuff, and I come with a bunch of lettuce and tomatoes and onions and whatever else from the store. And you're like, why'd you even bring that? I'm growing it in my own yard, right? I had to drive to the store. I spent money. I picked it up. That was all transported. It was all farmed by somebody else and cleaned and packaged and delivered to the store. The stockist stocked it. I checked it out. I did all this work to bring you the lettuce and all the other stuff for the veggies. Meanwhile, you've already grown it in your backyard, right?
Right.
So vegetarians and vegans do not grow their own phosphatidylcholine and creatine in their yard. They don't.
So they have to get an outside.
They have to make it.
Yeah.
And if 70% of the body's methylation is used to make creatine and phosphatidylcholine, how much homocysteine are vegetarians and vegans creating? Because methylation creates homocysteine, and they are having to synthesize and make a lot of creatine, a lot of phosphatidylcholine, which is producing a lot of homocysteine, which is a huge cardiovascular risk marker. It's associated with also neurological dysfunction, mood disorders, autism, not autism, dementia. It's massive. And I cannot tell you the number of vegans and vegetarians who've been very, very ill and also had cardiovascular disease and heart attacks. Yeah. They're there. I've worked with them one-on-one, infertile, recurrent miscarriages, so on. Yeah. And I totally respect where they're coming from. The problem is we are not taught that 70% of our methylation is used for this stuff, and it's generating a huge amount of homocysteine. You're deficient in B12. You're not even getting enough. And you're deficient in folate. You're a vegetarian or vegan who's consuming, pizzas or fast food, and you're not eating even salads. So being a vegan vegetarian it can be done properly, and it is done properly by a number of people. It's also done improperly by a lot.
Right. And properly would be adding supplements in to make up for what you're not getting in your diet.
I would, yes. Yeah, B12 especially. But there are ways to increase creatine, phosphatidylcholine, and choline in a vegan diet and vegetarian diet. You just have to be very mindful of that and know what all that is. And not enough people are talking about it.
Yeah. Do you know, of all the guests I've had on this podcast, it's like they're always this vegetarian topic comes up and everybody agrees. They have a little different slant on it, that the human body was not meant to be vegetarian. And
Yeah.
there is the ethical piece, and that's, understandable, but there's even some people who would debate with that a little bit. But I keep hearing it over and over again. Yet in our resetter group, we have so many people that want to be vegetarian, and I honor that. I just don't want them to be ill. So that's why I ask, what are some of the ways that they can supplement in?
I mean, I will say, when I was working with clients and patients, a number of them were vegans, vegetarians, and they were the sickest.
Yeah.
And
I was the sickest when I was a vegetarian.
Yeah. And I tried it for, I don't know, a year or so. I don't remember exactly how long I tried, but I definitely didn't do it right. I knew nothing about nutrition. I had no clue. I was probably more of a carbitarian than I was a vegetarian.
Yeah, I was too.
Yeah. But I was weak. I had no muscle. I was just bad. But I also was on the UW rowing team, and we had vegetarians on our rowing team, and they were built strong and healthy and fast runners. So, A, how are their genes?
I was
And
just
B,
gonna say, why is that?
what else was going on with them?
Yeah. So could a vegetarian get a StrateGene test to see what they need to add in nutrient wise? Would that be a simple solution if they wanted to ethically stay a vegetarian?
Yeah, for sure. And you would have more understanding of what to do and why. That when you understand why first, and then what you need to do and when you need to do it and all that, your compliance goes up and you feel more confident. If you feel more confident, you're going to take action. A lot of people, health professionals get pissed off when their patients aren't compliant. Oh, they're not compliant. Well, A, did you remove fear? B, did you explain it really well? Did you tell them why they need to do it, how they need to do it? And did you explain all that? Mm-hmm. And if you haven't, well, then, I'm not going to be compliant either.
Right.
Jump off that cliff over there.
Yeah. They need to know the rule of parenting, that if you want somebody to, your child to do something, you gotta have a little praise sandwich. You gotta build some rapport, and then you can go in hard with discipline. So yeah.
Sure.
Tell me, let's go into fasting. I want to talk about fasting and the microbiome with our genes, because again, this is fasting especially. We've got hundreds of thousands of resetters that are fasting. And I'm curious if genes will make it easier for you to fast, harder for you to fast, or is fasting part of cleaning your genes up?
Great question. Loaded question. And a lot of that, I have some things to share that are useful. Other things I have no idea. So I will share what I know. And I wish I had some notes down of things that I researched and I was super excited about that I don't remember what they are, but they were phenomenally important in regards to fasting. Anyway, now that I pissed you off and irritated you, because I'm not going to share you something that's phenomenally good.
No, this is good.
Yeah. So there's supplements out there called NAD, right? What is that? Nicotinamide or riboside or whatever it's called. And so niacin is one of your friends for fasting. Mm-hmm. And so when you fast, your niacin levels your NAD levels actually increase. So when you exercise, your NAD levels increase. So NADH is the opposite. NADH is elevated in diabetics. It's elevated in women who have gestational diabetes, diabetics, and it's elevated in people who are generally inflamed. And NADH, when NADH burns, it becomes NAD. When you eat glucose, glucose becomes NADH.
Okay.
So think about this for a second. You studied the Krebs cycle maybe back in the health professional days, or maybe you learned it in biochem years and years ago in school. But when you eat food, carbohydrate, or even some proteins, it becomes glucose. Glucose goes around, spins around, does its thing, it breaks down, and it becomes NADH. Inside the mitochondria, the first step in the mitochondria takes that NADH along with CoQ10 and it burns it. And it burns it to generate ATP.
Okay.
So if you have high NADH and you have sufficient CoQ10, the mitochondria can start making ATP. That's all great.
Awesome.
What people do not talk about is if you have too much NADH from not fasting, from eating excessively,
Okay.
snacking all the time, overeating, not moving, drinking soda, that NADH is at a high level. If your NADH is at a high level, your body has all that sugar. Remember, glucose makes NADH. So if glucose cannot become NADH, where's it going to go?
Yep.
It has to go somewhere. You don't puke it up. It has to go somewhere. So your body has alternative routes to deal with this. And this is not discussed enough, because you have doctors treating diabetics by forcing more glucose out of the blood into the cell. And the cells are screaming, they're downregulated glucose receptors. It's like, hey man, we're full in here. Don't give me any more glucose. We're full. But doctors are prescribing insulin to drive more glucose into the cell out of the blood. And if it's out of the blood in the cell, they're thinking, oh, everything's fine. But no, it's not fine. Now we got fatty liver anyway. So, but excessive glucose creates compounds that are extremely reactive and dangerous. That's why diabetics lose their eyesight. That's why they have erectile dysfunction. That's why they have heart attacks. That's why they get, bruises and gangrene in their legs, because they don't have any blood flow. And it uses up your body's number one antioxidant called glutathione.
Yep.
So there's this compound called methylglyoxal that is synthesized when NADH levels are too high. So when you fast, you are burning the NADH, and you are then reducing that excess NADH, which then allows the glucose to funnel through normally and not go through those alternative toxic, highly reactive pathways. So there are genes that increase inflammation. If you are inflamed and you are trying to fast, your ability to mobilize, transport, and burn fat is significantly reduced. So if you are in a fast and you've been struggling with inflammation or autoimmune disease or mitochondrial dysfunction in any way, your ability to walk a mile without post-workout soreness that lasts for days is compromised. If you are trying to fast and you're struggling with fasting, probably your antioxidant capacity is low and probably your inflammation is high. Yes, fasting will reduce your inflammation, and yes, fasting may reduce oxidative stress. However, if you are low glutathione or low in antioxidants prior to fasting, your fasting will be ineffective.
Ineffective as far as like trying to lose weight or
gain energy, burn fat as fuel, moving into ketosis.
So, okay, so if somebody's struggling to get into ketosis, could they then supplement with glutathione to help them? Interesting.
Yeah, and if a lot of people, though, who are really inflamed and have low antioxidants, if they reach for glutathione first, glutathione is a sulfur-based compound, and sulfur-based compounds as antioxidants can aggravate people. So you lean towards antioxidants that are more favorable, like PQQ, pyroquinolone quinone. Pyroquinolone quinone, some people are thinking, well, fluoroquinolones, are you talking about those? Those are nasty. No, it's not like that at all. In fact, PQQ would be really supportive of people who are struggling with fluoroquinolone toxicity. By the way, my son was just in for toe surgery last week. He had some growth on his toe. They pulled it off. it's fine. It's just a benign thingy. But I put on the allergens for him, nitrous oxide and fluoroquinolones. I put those as allergens.
Oh, okay.
In his chart. I told him, they said, what is he allergic to? You know, is he allergic to certain antibiotics? Is he allergic to certain gluten or anything? He's allergic to nitrous oxide and fluoroquinolones. What happens? And I just started throwing out random symptoms that are associated with those things. I said, oh, he's bedridden for weeks. And they're like, whoa. And he has like cognitive dysfunction for about 3 weeks after. They're like, holy shit, you know? And so I planted a little seed there, but I'm preventing him from getting those things.
Right.
He's never had them.
Yeah.
But so when doctors ask you what are you allergic to, put fluoroquinolones and nitrous oxide. Say it, and just make up some symptoms to support yourself.
Did they change the way they approached his surgery at all?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. They did not use nitrous oxide.
Okay.
I said nitrous oxide is just an anxiolytic anyway, and he's fine. He's not nervous, so he doesn't need it. And so they didn't use nitrous. And then fluoroquinolones, I'm not sure what they were going to use anyway, but they did put him on an IV antibiotic because they're working on a toe, which is a nasty and dirty environment.
Right.
And especially his feet. Sorry, Matthew.
Hey, I have an 18-year-old son.
Yeah.
Who plays soccer. I don't ever want to really see his feet.
Yeah, that's where I think he got his injury.
Yeah.
I think he got a, trauma to his big toe from the cleat. Yeah. So anyway, they use that.
What about the microbiome? In my research, it was like we started to understand genes through the Human Genome Project. And that was like our not understanding it to the degree you understand it. But then after that came the microbiome project. And it was like we had this initial understanding that these two communicate with each other.
Yeah.
But that's all we've been taught. So what do we know about like foods like sauerkraut and polyphenol foods? Like, are those interacting with our genes and causing different genes to clean up?
Yeah, big time. Clean up or get overwhelmed.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, I love Paul Saladino's work, the Carnivore Code book.
Yep, we've had him on here.
Yeah, he's great.
Mm-hmm.
And he came over here one day and we went wake surfing and he brought over some raw meat, salted meat that he prepared. And there was like 6 or 7 boys, all teenagers with their shirts off, all buff and from lifting. And then Paul walks in, just ripped as hell without his shirt. And they're like, damn. And he's eating raw meat. And they're like, what in the hell? But
I love it.
Yeah, they ate it. And they're like, wow, it's actually good. So yeah. Paul's funny and smart. Hella smart.
Very smart. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah,
bet I would have liked to be a fly on the wall of your guys' conversation.
Yeah, it was fun. A lot of fun. So the microbiome is fascinating, and we do not give it the respect that it deserves. And my appreciation and respect for it has grown, logarithmically. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like that. Mm-hmm. And my understanding of it is like this.
Yeah.
So I will just say that I've done some crazy things with probiotics that I never knew that was even possible. And so I designed a probiotic based on research that actually is known to modulate histamine response, based on the strains. And I started using it myself, and I didn't think anything of it. But I used to, if I touch dust mites or dust bunnies under the bed, I get red dots all over my hands. If I walk barefoot in an environment like that, I get red dots all over my feet. I had eczema on my ankles for years, like 20 years. And if I pulled something out and did some spring cleaning in the house and there was dust bunnies everywhere, I'm like, oh God, I'll clean it, but I'm gonna have to go to shower after because I'd just be itchy and horrible. And one day we moved into this rental, and because we're remodeling our home, I pulled the dryer out because it wasn't working, and it was just disgusting. And I'm like, oh, well, here we go. And I'm going to shower after. So I cleaned everything up, filthy dirty, cleaned, all done. I wasn't reacting at all. And I was thinking, wait a minute, what? Right. This isn't right. What's changed? I literally stood there in the laundry room with the dryer pulled out. I'm covered in dust and I'm not reacting. I'm like, what's changed? I've been taking this probiotic for like 2 weeks. That was it. That was
Yep.
it. And and then my son got a mosquito bite, and I happened to take the probiotic with us to Hawaii. I was like, you know what? Just for fun, I opened the capsule, I put it on a plate, I added a couple drops of water, and I just dabbed it on the mosquito bite, took the itch away.
Wow.
And then people with runny noses, put some probiotic in their nose, chronic runny nose, gone.
So do you know what strains of bacteria were in it?
Yeah, I designed it. So there's lactobacillus, they're all lactobacillus. So there's plantarum, there's rhamnosus. I forget the other ones offhand, but there is no lactobacillus bulgaricus. There's no lactobacillus fermentum. There's no histamine producing strains. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing on foods. If you are following a low histamine diet or a low oxalate diet or low this diet or a fasting forever, you need to understand that your microbiome are bacteria, obviously, and they need food. Mm-hmm. And if you are not eating food, you are shifting your microbiome, either for the better or for the worse. Mm-hmm. And obese people have a different microbiome. People who exercise have a different microbiome. People who fast have a different microbiome. People who eat a bunch of veggies have a different microbiome. So if you are oxalate free and histamine free and dairy free and all this stuff free, whatever microbiome that you had that was present before to help consume that stuff and process it, if you reintroduce it later, you're going to have a very unfavorable response due to those probiotics not even being there to help handle that load, because they're gone. You didn't support them. So died. if you are low oxalate and you want to try to get oxalates back, first you got to get rid of the overgrowth. You got to support, gut health and gallbladder health and stomach acid and all that. And then you introduce specific probiotics, which I'm still learning, but you introduce oxalates at a low level, bit by bit, so that you can regrow that microbiome again.
That makes sense. Do you think you could take, we do a lot of gut zoomer tests, and I'm thinking now, could we take our gut zoomer test and a StrateGene? Is there any way to overlap that information?
There is some that's useful. There's not as much as I would like. So here's the deal with StrateGene. So StrateGene it's like 23andMe or Ancestry, but more like 23andMe because it's health stuff too, even though 23andMe health stuff is worthless in my opinion. So you spit in the tube, it comes back, and you get a report, and you got, 100 genes or so that are discussed. But you have a raw data of thousands of genes. And so we report to you what we've researched and what we've done, and we give you that in the report. Now we have other genes which we have researched, which we have not reported to you yet. So we are going to develop a gut metabolism or leaky gut test or a report, something along those lines. So for example, in the current StrateGene, we have DAO, and DAO and ALDH2 genes are really, really important.
Right.
So the body is inherently complicated for our own survival purposes. And we as health professionals and owners of our own bodies, we need to respect the complexity and understand the complexity and dive in and appreciate that and to leverage it and harness it. And if we do that, you will thrive. Mm-hmm. If you try to take shortcuts and hack your way through it, you will never achieve where you want to be. And it'll be a frustrating journey.
Yeah, I am so in alignment with you on that. Let me finish up with this. We have a handful of questions we'd love to ask our guests. And one of my questions to you is, and I don't even know if there is a favorite, but what's your favorite gene?
Oh boy, I don't think everybody's asked me that before. I'm going to say NOS3 for now.
Okay. Why?
For now. Because it's so easily dirtied. It's so easily dirtied, and it's so influenced by all these other genes that if your NOS3 is working, that means so many of your other genes are working well.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
NOS3 is the gene that is the last gene to clean as you're reading the book. And my hands are really warm right now. And that means my NOS3 is happy. It's working well. And I listen to my NOS3 a lot. And I do it through my breathing and my hands. And it's one of those things that a lot of people are walking through every single day with cold hands and feet and mouth breathing and just being mindless about their breath. And with NOS3, you can immediately warm up your hands, alter your breath, and experience increased perfusion of blood flow and warmth to your hands within a minute. And you've cleaned up your NOS3 gene, and you see it and you feel it. And it's just so hyper responsive to your actions.
Okay, I'll have to go check mine out. What do you feel like is there one lifestyle tool that will clean most genes?
Yeah, a lot. One is breathing properly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, breathing it's automatic, autonomic nervous system. We take it for granted. If you focus on your breath more, that's key. Without air, we're dead in a few minutes, right? So
Right.
let's remember that. Another one would be regret is really damaging.
Interesting.
So if you make a decision to have a party and, you know, have a donut, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe step till 3 a.m, and then it's 3:30 rolls around and you go to bed and you're pissed off at yourself for doing all that.
Mm-hmm.
And the next day you're tired and you're still pissed off that you did all that. That's not good. And so I say if you're going to go and you're going to party and you stay up till 3 and you're going to have those donuts, enjoy it, love it, have fun with it. And then, you know, the next day when you wake up, you're like, okay, I had fun last night. Now I'm going to clean up my genes a little bit.
Yeah,
And
I love that. We say that all the time, like, you know, being healthy doesn't mean deprivation.
right.
And that's amazing. Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, dirty genes it's not. I purposely didn't call it clean genes or, you know, pristine genes or anything like that, because look, I make decisions that are not ideal all the time, and the key is, thankfully, I know my biochemistry and my own genetics, and I know where I can take shortcuts, and I know where I can't, or I know where I can indulge, and I know where I can't. I can't touch gluten. I just can't. I'm not celiac, but I just don't do well with gluten. I don't touch it. You know, that's one thing I don't touch. You know, I'll have a alcoholic beverage once every couple of months, you know, very rare. I'm tolerating better, but I still don't feel good from alcohol. So I don't go there that often because it just takes me too long to recover.
Yeah.
If I recovered better, I'd probably drink a little bit more. You know, but I don't beat myself up over it when I do have a drink.
Yeah, that's
So,
fascinating. Okay, and what toxin do you think right now in our environment is damaging or dirtying our
mhm.
genes the most?
Ooh. Indoor air,
Hmm.
and a lot of indoor air is combustibles. And if it's not combustible, you know, meaning it's burning, like, you know, your gas furnace or your gas stove or your gas fireplace, all these things are, you know, producing significant amounts of formaldehyde. So it's whatever is in your environment that is producing the most exposure for you. So in our home, our biggest exposure, it's pretty darn clean in here. I mean, I got a cork floor. I have drywall that sucks in formaldehyde and breaks it down. I have
Wow.
wood ceilings.
Wow.
I have wood doors. I have all natural paints, all wood furniture. I mean, my exposure in here is minimal. So I would have to say that our biggest exposure is from our gas heat in our furnace, because this was not a new build. This building was a new build, but our
Okay.
home has a gas furnace. So I would say gas,
Okay.
gas heat, gas, water heating, and gas cooking.
Interesting. I would not have guessed you to say that. That's
Yeah.
and
So
I've heard that before about indoor air, that it's bad. I didn't think of it in a genetic way.
Yeah, it's because every time you turn on that stove, or every time your heat kicks on, or every time you kick on that fireplace that you see it, you're sitting outside at the ski resort or outside bars, or you got in San Diego, you've got those heaters that you can sit outside and they're warming you, and you smell that gas. Your glutathione genes are at work right now.
Fascinating.
Right? So that's a big one. So take glutathione when that happens, and then use the hood when you're cooking, and use the hood, the fan, turn it on before you ignite the stove.
So you do the fan first, and then interesting.
Yes. So because when you turn it on, there's a little bit of gas that comes through before it ignites, and you probably almost always smell that, and you're like, oh, it's just a little bit. It's an exposure, and it will accumulate over time, and it's depleting your glutathione over time. And now if you go outside and you're sitting in traffic, or you smell formaldehyde, or you take some Tylenol, your glutathione levels are just dropping.
Right. Fascinating. Okay, my last question, we ask everybody this. If you had one message for the world that you could get into everybody's brain, what would that message be?
Easy. Be grateful.
I love that.
Yeah. I mean, it's look, I mean, a lot of these things I'm saying are really simple, and they are really simple, but it's hard to practice.
Yeah. So true.
It's being grateful. We get stuck at what's wrong or what can be better. We get jealous of, so-and-so's car, or so-and-so can run faster than me, or they're stronger than me, or they're better looking than me. But you have a lot of attributes that other people don't have. And, so I would love you to be more grateful. If I could just teach my boys and model gratefulness, I've won as a parent.
Oh my gosh, I love that. What a beautiful way to end this. And thank you so much. I mean, this is really a topic I have not dove into with my resetters. You have my brain really intrigued. So now I can't wait to take my StrateGene and dive into all your courses and your book a little bit deeper. And then what I want to do is take that and figure out how to use it with our resetters. So I will report back and let you know how we implement this.
Yeah, and feel free to reach out to me too, and I can help you out design it so it's a bit better. And if you have a question, or you did this and this really worked, you can share, or I did this and it backfired. Let me know. Or I find some people who fast 16 hours thrive, but after on day 6, they're or whatever, they're really failing. Yeah. There's a lot of things at play, and I have a glucose metabolism pathway here, which is not in StrateGene, but we'll get there. We're going to be making new pathways as we evolve. Vitamin D is being worked on right now. Vitamin D metabolism is crazy.
Awesome. Yeah, I would love, I mean, we have so many people that fast. It would be really interesting to see the correlation between their StrateGene and fasting, and could we make some changes going into the fast? You got my brain thinking.
Yeah.
If we knew what you needed going into the fast, would it make the fast easier? That's kind of a cool way to look at this.
So inflammation, oxidative stress, and cofactors are going to be the biggest issues for people entering a fast. Look, a lot of people are not metabolically flexible. So they just can't burn fat. And so they try to fast, and they end up burning protein in their muscles rather than fat. Yeah. And now they get weaker and sicker, and they're accumulating ammonia and so on. So yeah, it's I've actually been trying to design a supplement for fat burning. The first time I thought I had it, I tested it, and it just wanted me to go eat carbs. So it just made me hungry. It was like, that's not what I wanted. I failed. Yeah. Try it again.
Good. Yeah, no good. Well, Dr. Lynch, thank you so much. This has been amazing. And we will definitely report back, because now I feel like I got enough information that I could go and apply it to our people and see what happens. So I'll let you know. I'll keep you posted.
Excited to hear
thank you. Yeah, thank you for time, and thank you for doing what you're doing, because I think you are a lone wolf in your category, and much needed. So
yeah. It gets lonely, but it's fun.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Have a beautiful day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.